What's up everybody, hope you have an amazing day so far. My name is Phil and today's video we're going to check out the perhaps most portable yet still fully capable rig, and that is the ToneX ONE Plus. Let's check out a demo track which I recorded just with stock presets which come with this little unit over here, and then dive into what this thing is all about and what this is capable of. While a lot of things went down the gutter in the past years when it comes to affordability of really great sounding guitar rigs, which are super compact, we live truly in the golden age. When evaluating the market as it is today, we are truly talking from an entitled position. When I'm looking back at 2020, the only devices which were capable of doing amp capture profiling was the Kemper Profiler as well as the Quad Cortex, and basically there wasn't really anything out there which could do something in such a similar quality until IK Multimedia has launched the ToneX software, and shortly after, this bad boy over here, the original OG ToneX-Pedal. The ToneX-Pedal was a true success for IK Multimedia. The ToneX-Pedal was really a truly remarkable unit at its time because it could do more accurate captures than the Kemper Profile and the Quad Cortex at the time, and was very affordable with pricings round about 400 euros. That success quickly enabled IK Multimedia to heavily invest into further developments, and the result of that one was the even smaller ToneX ONE, which is an engineering marvel in itself. And if that wasn't even enough, 1 year after launching the ToneX ONE, IK Multimedia blasted out the next hit with the ToneX Plug, which sounds incredible. I already made a demo on this on my channel. This one sounds truly remarkable. I use it often when we are backstage, before concerts, when I just want to noodle a little bit around, when I'm on vacation or something. So this over here is my portable rig, and it sounds really basically the same as if I would capture my EVH or my JVM, because I got captures for those amps loaded onto this small little unit. Just sounds incredible. I'm super happy with it. When looking at the ToneX ONE and the ToneX Plug and comparing them against each other, then there are a few different things which the ToneX ONE has over the ToneX Plug and vice versa. So one thing which the ToneX ONE, in my opinion, has over the ToneX Plug is that you actually have knobs which you can twist and tweak. You know exactly where the settings are when you are looking at them, or at least you kind of get a feel for what's going on. You have buttons, you can easily via foot switch press between two different presets, while the ToneX Plug has the amazing Bluetooth capability, so that way you can actually hook it up to your smartphone, configure all of the settings and parameters via the ToneX Control Center-App, and a lot of different options which come with Bluetooth, so that you can play music from your smartphone into the ToneX Plug and then use the headphone out in order to listen simultaneously to the capture sound as well as the ToneX Plug amp sound. And of course, you could see where this is going. The community was screaming and pledging IK Multimedia to basically bake in the added features which are in the ToneX plug into the ToneX One, because that's something which everybody was asking from day one, like Bluetooth connectivity. Why can't I hook this up via my app, and so on and so forth. And that is exactly where IK Multimedia's newest ToneX release comes in, the ToneX One Plus. The ToneX One Plus truly combines the best out of both worlds from the ToneX One and the ToneX plug. You have a few added features which are incredible. So first off, I want to start with the hardware revision, and one of them is we have MIDI in and MIDI output over here. This was something not capable to do on the ToneX One without any exterior help. So there were like USB protocols which have been read out, translated into MIDI signals, and then you could command that device via those pedals. However, having that natively implemented makes stuff so much easier, and this really makes this a super powerful portable rig. In addition to that, we now finally have a Bluetooth connectivity, so we can hook this up to the smartphone, and we can then load in the ToneX Control Center and tweak all of the settings from the Bluetooth app onto this unit. So you might come from the Neurolamp modeler camp and you might think to yourself, why would I invest in anything ToneX related? So why would I go that route when we have NAMM A2? But I do think that first of all, the ToneX capturing is pretty accurate, I must say. I'm still a big fan of how it sounds, how it feels, how it responds, especially when the gain staging is set right. That is a key, but that's also with NAMM. And secondly, the entire ecosystem and how this works together with your smartphone, on your PC, how the capturing process is integrated into the software, all of that works really nicely interconnected to each other. I'm a huge fan of ToneX, and I will certainly not give that up simply just to kind of put myself in one of the camps. I love all of the gear which I'm checking out on the channel, and yeah, so do I love the ToneX pedals. So now that we listened to some of the stock presets on the ToneX ONE Plus, let's check out how we can manipulate those presets in order to load our tone models. First on the PC editor app, which is called ToneX Editor, before we then move over to my Android smartphone with the ToneX Control Center. The ToneX Editor program is part of the, I would call it, ToneX suite, which comprises of 3 different programs. We got the ToneX software itself, which is all about playing the tone models which you have created, building up your own presets, tweaking around, playing it, and having fun. Let's quit that. And then next up we have the ToneX Modeler, which is all about capturing the tone models which you then want to use and load eventually. And then we have the ToneX Editor, which is all about loading them into the library, managing the presets, and so on and so forth. And over here you can see in the corner below that the ToneX is plugged in over here via this USB cable down below, so it's connected directly with the ToneX Editor and it's nicely synchronized. I'm first going to go ahead and do a factory default, so we're going to do a factory reset. Let's do that so that we have everything, which I eventually changed a little bit, like defaulted and set up. So because I want to show you one thing which is very important, very, very important, maybe the most important thing in order to get your ToneX to sound good, and that is the global setup input trim. Now, there's a lot of conflicting information out there on how you're supposed to set up the global setup on your ToneX-Pedal. There's, like recommendations that you have to set it to number XYZ so that it sounds good. I think that is too much oversimplified because there's a relationship between, first of all, what's your preference, and then secondly, what did the tone model creator had equipment-wise, how did they set up their stuff, because that determines way more how to set the input trim than anything else. However, that information is not necessarily taken always into consideration, so my personal recommendation would be to go lower than the 8.5, especially when we're using the stock presets of IK Multimedia. I like to go to 0.0. When you got the 8.5 set up and you're going to something like the Dumble Overdrive Special, it might not be that bad yet, because if you have like a crunchy amp and you just overdrive it a little bit, then it can still sound good. So overall, that doesn't sound that bad. Now let's go into the more high gain territory, and the higher I'm going with the high gain territory, the more you're gonna recognize that something is a little bit off. Let's go with the Big Hair 800, which is a Marshall JCM 800. If you ever played a Marshall JCM 800, you already know that something's off over here. It's a little bit too pushy in that, like fizzy frequency range, I would say. Now let's go to the 51 Chug, which is a PV5150 MK1. That is way too much gain. Now, you could go ahead and you could assign the gain lower over here to your liking, so very low. And you're now getting a much more realistic representation of a 5150. Or if you put back the gain in there, you can go to the global setup and you can set the input trim to 0.0, which I find is a pretty good baseline for the stock IKM presets and throughout the entire like IK Multimedia range of presets which they offer. You can now hear that we're still too high, so I would rather go over here again on the gain a little bit down. Now that's a sound where I really can say this sounds very akin to a 5150, and I then can move forward with that one. I'm gonna go to the Shiva Tight right now. I'm gonna override the 5150. Over here the gain is by default on this preset set a little bit lower. Now on this particular preset, I would like to have more gain. So I can then go a little bit up with the treble, maybe a little bit down with the mids, and like so. I never played a Bogner Shiva. I don't know if that's what they're supposed to sound like, but that does sound pretty cool. Let's go to the pair of precision, which I also used for the song, for the demo track. And here we got the gain actually, you know, like cranked up. And now even with the gain cranked up with the 0.0, I'm getting in that sweet spot. So that's perfect. So, input trim is super important, but that's just one part of the gain staging process when it comes to getting the best out of your presets. However, we have not spoken yet about how to actually manipulate the tones. You got two tabs over here, the editor and the librarian. So under the librarian, you can adapt all the presets or all the tone models which you have, and then just basically slam them over to the device. I like the Plug Chug 1 and the Plug Chug 2. Those are my rhythm tones. I want to go with the EVH type, so that's Plug Chug 2, and I'm gonna drag and drop it over here to the obsessive drive and overwrite that one. That's now in the list, but still not assigned to one of the foot switch buttons over here. So I'm gonna drag it over to A. So A is now my Plug Chug 2 preset. Now, I want to go ahead and also create the plug lead, which is this one over here. Drag that over to the streets delay preset, overwrite that, and then move that over here to the B block. And on the stomp mode, I'm just going to leave that because I never actually use the stomp mode. So I'm only using basically the foot switchable thing. And now you can see that the purple LEDs are indicating that the plug lead is active, and when I press once, then the green LEDs are active, and that's indicated by the plug chug. I can assign that to different colors. Let's go with that bluish hue over here, and then you can see that the colors on the ToneX ONE have been assigned. There's an SM57 Fretman configuration which I made on my Marshall. Let's see what that sounds like. Now, we have the same issue again. It's completely overblown, so we have to go into the global setup and set the input trim a little bit lower. Let me go ahead and dial in a little bit more bass, maybe a little less treble, and more mids, so that we get a little bit fatter sound. Now I got everything set up with the editor. This ToneX would technically be ready for the stage for me to take it on there, because I don't really need more than that sound over here. I can slam that into front of house, put that into my in-ear monitors, and I would be good to go. I got now everything prepared in order to showcase the ToneX Control Center. We got the preset set up as I have shown before, and as soon as we switch, we are on the lead one. And as you can see on the ToneX Control Center app, it also goes through plug chug 2 and plug lead. As you can see, you got the amp controls over here, which you can navigate. So you got the bass, mid, and treble, which you can simply set up by pressing those knobs and then twisting them up and down. Then you got the gain and the volume. Let me tear down the gain a little bit. And if you go over here, you have the advanced controls where you can set up all the frequencies, the presence, the mix, the depth, and so on and so forth. So super powerful alone that we already have that. By pressing this power on off, you can actually deactivate the amp setup or the respective block in which you're working. We have the noise gate, which is set appropriately. So my threshold is always somewhere between 70 and 55. That's a little bit of a bummer that you cannot actually double tip and then type in a number. So my OCD brain is always a little bit struggling with that. Let's move over to the amp and then to the cabinet. Cabinet is interesting because you can either set the respective tone model cabinet. In this case, there is no tone model cabinet implemented, so I would have to select one of those which are available. Don't want to do that. I could use the VIR, which then can be opened with the VIR panel, and here you have the different microphones. Let's go ahead with dynamic and ribbon microphone, and I want to have the mic mix very much in favor of mic 1. See if we can change the actual VIR. There we go. So here you got different models. So let's try the 412 T1. I'm not a fan of that one. Which I think is okay is the 1960. In a pinch, if you don't have an impulse response, very usable, but I much rather like to go with the impulse responses which are loaded into this unit. In theory, you can go ahead and then have an IR catalog on your smartphone and then just choose one of those. I'll just roll with the SM57 Fretman because I think that's anyways a pretty good sounding impulse response. A little bit on the thinner side of things, but therefore it cuts better through the mix. Next up, we got a compressor where you can set threshold, attack, and gain. Not going to mess with that one on a distorted channel. And then we have a chorus, which I will very much dig into. So we have the rate. I like to have that a little bit higher. Maybe like 0.7. Let's leave it there at 0.8. And everything else looks pretty good. The modulation effects on the ToneX series sound fantastic, to be honest. Let's go with the flanger, which also sounded really good. A lot of fun to be guaranteed when using the modulation effects, especially on clean channel. They sound fantastic. And then the digital delay and reverb is something which I would like to show in the plug lead preset, because there I'm actually using that. So over here, I think that already becomes very apparent what you can do with this sort of menu. And that makes me excited because I do believe that at some point in time, there might be a larger ToneX unit coming out with even more of these blocks in the chain. So I'm really, really curious what IK Multimedia will bring out. This is not official information. This is just me speculating around. I have no idea, to be honest, what IK Multimedia has currently on the platter and what they're developing, but that's my small bit of speculation over there. Let's go over to the plug lead. As you can see, tons of options which we can choose from, digital or tape delay. I like to leave it to the tape because it sounds a little bit more natural. Yeah, so it's not that much because I'm already, like setting up everything so that it fits to me, but the tape per repetition has a little bit more of that top end being shaved off, which I like. Then we got the plate reverb. So plate is my favorite one. Color, I like to put it down. So that way the top end gets shaved off a little bit more. And then with the tape and with some additional settings, I can actually set it up to my liking. I like to shave out the treble, boost the mids, and make sure that we have not too much presence and depth over here. And gain also has to be somewhat under control. And then we can shred. I think that overall, what we can do in the editor settings is pretty cool and pretty obvious. We can then go over here on the amps, for example, and then we can actually choose a lot of different tone models, which we have basically integrated into the ToneX Control Center and your smartphone app. And then under My Collections, you can actually go into all of those collections which you have synchronized with Tone Net. Not Tone 3000, that's a different thing. And yeah, when you go to ToneNet, speaking of, it takes a little bit of a while so that it loads, but then after it's loaded, you can choose all the different tone models and presets to your liking. I'm just gonna go with plug, hang on. Let me type that in, plug, there we go. Because a lot of presets which I named for the ToneX plug were named with the plug hyphen thing. And now you can see that I got a lot of stuff going on. The unfortunate thing is that the search is not that good, so it's not that open. So you really have to kind of know what you are searching for preset name-wise, otherwise you're gonna have a hard time finding that stuff. But yeah, this already gives you kind of an inkling what's going on. Let me go to the plug clean. Let me load that here. The tone model in the selected preset will be overwritten. Yes, I'm okay with that. Let's just go and roll with that. And now we have the tone model. So I think that showcases how much you can actually change with the addition of ToneNet going in there in your different presets. Speaking of presets, you got the dual mode over here, which you can then choose from, either A or B. And then you can either also select which one is supposed to be active in the stomp mode. I always go with the dual mode, so I don't really care about the stomp mode. And over here, you can then pretty much assign them. So you can, for example, select B is my plug lead, and then A is supposed to be my 51 chug, like so. Moving over to tools, we have the tuner and the metronome. So we got a tuner, which works fairly decent, I must say. So that's cool. And then we got a metronome, which you can set up to the respective tempo. You can set the tone, how high the accent's supposed to play, and then you can play the metronome. And then over here in the menu, you have all of the different settings where you can link your account. And under the settings menu, you can set up the global setup. And here you can see again, the trim input is set to -10 dB, what I said before in the ToneX editor app. The global volume can be set. Under general, you can global bypass the cabinets. That can be useful if you don't want to go actually into front of house or something, but just go through a power amp, which we're going to check out in a moment. Direct monitoring, you can connect this as an USB interface into your PC, the ToneX ONE Plus, and then you can actually have like the active stuff going on. So the presets which you have set up are being sent through as well, or you can bypass that direct monitoring. Let's take a look at one of the core features of the ToneX ONE Plus, and that its MIDI capabilities. Now, I am running one of the most bare bones solutions you can run MIDI-wise, running the ToneX ONE Plus with a TRS cable into the M-Wave Chocolate, which is a super affordable, powerful MIDI switcher. I now got everything set up so that I have 4 presets over here. This MIDI controller is now set up so that it will flick between those 4 presets depending on which foot switch I'm pressing over here. Now, this over here is called program changes, MIDI program changes. When you look at the manual, you'll find that there's references to MIDI program changes, which will just simply go through the different memory slots, and then there are MIDI control changes. Control changes is where the fun with MIDI really starts, because you can then do all different sorts of shenanigans with a press of a button over here. You could, for example, on one press, set up that the gain is going up, that the bass is going down, that the treble is going down, the mids are being cranked, turn on the delay, set different delay times, and that's all with the press of a button. And then you could eventually, if the pedal supports that, set it up so that you have that as a toggle. This could be interesting if you want to avoid preset switching gaps like the plague. So super powerful stuff, and it is awesome that they have now added this to the small unit. That makes it so much more flexible in regards of building up a full-blown rig with the small ToneX. I'm just gonna go through the presets over here. As I said before, super simple program changes. We're gonna start with my clean channel, and I'm gonna go back to the editor where we got the plug clean now set up. This short snippet is basically just a proof of concept, and it does work, and it's awesome. I can't wait to build in the ToneX ONE Plus into one of my small mini rigs. Before we wrap up this video, let's check out the ToneX ONE Plus in one final use case, and that is running it through a power amp into a guitar cabinet. And I got the perfect companion for the ToneX ONE Plus, and that is the 2 Notes Reload 2. This is a load box attenuator, reactive load box, and this also serves as a stereo power amp, bringing in really great sounds into the cabinet which is plugged into. I will crank up the output a little bit on the reload so that we're getting a nice volume, not fully band practice volume, but it's very loud and it can easily annoy neighbors if I would have any. Okay, hold on. I already see the comments coming where the people are hunting me down for plugging in a 250 euro pedal into a 1000 euro load box / power amp. I get you. I do understand where you're coming from, but therefore we're going to check it also right now with the Harley Benton GPA 100, which is only, I think, 80 euros at ToneX. So let's see how that, together with the ToneX ONE Plus, fares into the Marshall cabinet. Just to make an absolutely ridiculous point, I built a super duper compact setup over here where I got the ToneX ONE placed on my Harley Benton GPA 100 power amp, which has a 3-band EQ, so I can set up anything if I want to. I am using the NUX C5RC in order to have wireless, so I have no cabling going on. Then I'm using this TRS cable going into the M-Wave Chocolate, and basically that then goes to the Marshall 4x12, which I got behind me. Super compact setup. It can be loud enough for a band practice if you got the right cabinet. You can really set up a full-blown rig with the MIDI controller over here because you have access to different presets. And this is over here one of the most simple MIDI switchers there are out there. Let's wrap up this video with my final thoughts and conclusions on the ToneX ONE Plus. And I think you can already guess where this is going. I am a big fan of the ToneX ONE Plus. It has a lot of the things resolved which we were asking for so long, like the Bluetooth connectivity, having MIDI in out. This is so much a fleshed out product by now that it's hard for the competition to actually attack this one, especially since this is lower in price. So what are the downsides of this product? Now, first off, this is not NAM capable, and NAM is still a little bit more accurate than the ToneX capturing process. Now, even NAM A2 Lite is a little bit better than ToneX, but it is very much in the same ballpark. So it's not that big of an issue, I would say, because this also sounds fantastic. So there's not really a downside to it, but if you want to be nitpicky, then that's one thing. Another thing which you have to consider is there is an audible preset switching gap. This has a gap of 15 milliseconds, I believe it is. So if that's a huge issue for you, then just be wary of this. I personally think in the band context, when you are, like doing your thing, it does not become that apparent. But if you are, like in silence in a studio environment, then of course that becomes very apparent because your focus is on that sudden gap which is happening. Another thing which I would love to see, and I hope that this will at some point in time be a firmware upgrade, is that one of the outputs of this device will send out a signal without an impulse response, and one will send a signal with the impulse response. That would make this the ultimate small modeler for your super tiny pedal board, because then you could use one out with a DI box with the IR that goes to front of house, one out without an IR that goes to the power amp, and then you can serve to whatever situation you have. Throw in a small wireless system like the NUX C5RC, which I also reviewed on this channel, and then you're absolutely good to go and can have like this small of a board with 3 different smaller pedals, or maybe just a ToneX, the power amp, and then the DI box somewhere in between. So would be super handy if we would get that. If that will happen at some time, I will make a video on that one showing how small of a rig you can actually get over there. And with the MIDI in and out, you can actually have access to multiple presets, which is super cool. Overall, this is a smash hit in my opinion. This is maybe the best ToneX pedal there is out there. It is cheaper than the OG ToneX pedal, so I personally think it's an absolute no-brainer to get this one, add that to your portfolio. And even if you don't use it as your main rig, just having this as a backup is perfect. I want to thank again IK Multimedia for sending out the ToneX ONE Plus and also collaborating with me on other videos in the past and hopefully in the future. I want to also thank everybody of you out there watching my videos. You are the reason why all of this is possible. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next video, and until then, keep it metal.